This video will go over exercise 5A, introducing you to adjustment layers, and the first one that we will work with is the hue saturation adjustment layer. So this exercise comes with a Photoshop document, so definitely download this Photoshop file, the exercise file, to your computer. And then once it downloads, you can go to File, Open, and just find the file on your computer where you downloaded it and open it up. So this is a fun little exercise with adjustment layers. There's not too much to know about the technical side of things. We pretty much want to create an adjustment layer that will get applied to this background layer, this beautiful image of the peacock. So let's go to Layer, and we'll go to New Adjustment Layer, and we will choose Hue Saturation. So this is an adjustment layer to modify the colors in the image. So this window that pops up, uh, the only useful thing I want you to remember is about the clipping mask. Okay, so we've used clipping masks in previous lessons. It's basically a way of taking one layer and clipping it to another. So the same applies for these adjustment layers. So in this case, just to show you how it works, I'm going to turn on Use Previous Layer to create clipping mask. Okay, so and push OK. And that setting that I just checked on, it doesn't really do anything different in this document because this document only has one layer. But in effect, what it's doing is taking the adjustment layer that we just created over here, and it's clipping it to the layer beneath. So our hue saturation adjustment layer will only be applied to the layer immediately below. So that's why in this situation, it doesn't make any difference because there is only one layer in the document. But if you were to have multiple layers, then the rule with adjustment layers is that it affects all of them below. So for example, if I just go to Layer, Release Clipping Mask, you don't need to do this, but just have a look. So your adjustment layer can look like this if there is no clipping mask. And what that means is it affects all the layers below. But like I just said, there's only one layer in this document, so it doesn't really make a difference. But I'm going to just create that clipping mask again, just so you get familiar with this idea of using clipping masks with adjustment layers. In future exercises, when we have documents with more than one layer, this might be useful. All right, so the way to edit an adjustment layer is to open the Properties panel. If you do not see the Properties panel, you can definitely open up in the Window menu and check if your Properties panel has a check mark. If it has a check mark, that's good. That means it's probably visible here somewhere. If not, another way to see it is to double click on the thumbnail of the clipping mask. So note, not on this white box over here. That will change the properties to something else. This is actually a layer mask, which we'll look at some time later. You want to click on the thumbnail, the icon of the adjustment layer. This is the icon for the hue saturation. So when I click on it, you'll see the properties of the hue saturation layer get loaded. So now we can start to have some fun with this adjustment layer. What I want you to do is look over here where it says Master. And I want you to click on Master and change that to one of the color channels. So let's start with red. What this means is the effect that I'm going to apply, the adjustment that I'm going to apply, will only get applied to the reds in the image. And then we have a few sliders here to start making the adjustment. So we're going to keep to this the simplest use of this, which is these three sliders. And you can ignore all the stuff happening in the bottom half of this panel. So this first slider here is for the hue, allows you to change, to shift the hue of the color channel that you selected. So if I start dragging the slider, anything that has red in this image will get shifted according to the hue over here. So you can really have fun with this to try and alter the colors in your image. Especially with this peacock, it could get very, very interesting. So you can shift the hue, you can play with the saturation. So the saturation is the amount of absorption that takes place with the color. So if you increase the saturation, you'll see more of that color getting absorbed or visible on the screen. And if you take away the saturation, you're pulling away that color to the point where if you bring it down to minus 100, you'll take away that color completely. So this essentially will remove the reds from the image. So I'm just going to keep it here in the middle and then also show you that you have the lightness slider, and this will make it brighter or darker. But again, only modifying the reds. So it's not super apparent with this color channel. It is making some differences, but let's try a different color channel. So I'm going to switch to, let's say, the greens. I can now start shifting the colors of the greens, and you can see some changes in the color of the peacock's feathers. So I've basically modified the greens. Let's change some of the saturation, increasing it a little bit, and let's play with the lightness and darkness. Let's go over to, let's say, the yellows. Oh, this one is having a very big effect. So that means there's a lot of yellows in this image. Okay, so my recommendation is you can change the sliders pretty quick just to see what is being affected, but then you want to just move slowly until you find that position that you like. Okay, so play around with this. Please take a good 10 minutes to explore this adjustment layer and try to create some really interesting results. This is a very fun image to play with, so try to do something creative and be careful not to destroy the original quality of the image. So we still want to see a peacock, and we just might want to add some visual interest. So we can do some stuff to help the colors become a little more vibrant, or we could do stuff to make it look a little surreal and alter the colors completely. Just always be careful and never overdo any of these kinds of adjustments. You can also, if you want some extra practice, head over to Pexels or Pixabay and try to find another image and play around with it using this hue saturation adjustment layer.